Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, Monks, Venerable Sir, those monks replied. The Blessed One said this, Monks, I will teach you dependent origination. Listen to that and attend closely, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, those monks replied. The Blessed One said this, and what, monks, is dependent origination? With ignorance as condition, avijja, volition comes to be. Ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, name and form, nama rupa, sometimes it's translated as mentality, materiality. With name and form as condition, the six sense bases, salayatana. With six sense bases as condition, contact, phassa. With contact as condition, feelings. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. This, monks, is called dependent origination. I'll stop here for a moment. So here you see, this whole chain of 12 links, dependent origination, is actually explaining the dependent origination of suffering. Because to untangle this mass of suffering, we have to understand where suffering comes from. So these 12 links is trying to explain where suffering comes from. You see the final link is called aging and dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. So this is the whole mass of suffering. Aging and sickening and dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, sometimes called grief and despair. So all this is suffering. So later you'll see when they explain backwards, the Buddha will ask, where does this aging and dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair come from? Comes from birth. Once you have birth, you must have aging and dying, etc. So it traces it the other way. So this is called dependent origination, and you always must remember when we say dependent origination, in the Buddha's teachings, it's always dependent origination of suffering to continue. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes cessation of volition. With the cessation of volition, cessation of consciousness. With the cessation of consciousness, cessation of name and form, nama rupa, or mentality and materiality. With the cessation of mentality and materiality, cessation of the six sense bases. With the cessation of the six sense bases, cessation of contact. With the cessation of contact, cessation of feeling. With the cessation of feeling, cessation of craving. With the cessation of craving, cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging or attachment, cessation of existence, of being. With the cessation of being, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. So here you see there are two ways of this dependent origination. The first one is the arising of suffering, and the other one, when he talks about cessation of each one of the links, is the cessation of suffering. Sutta 12.10. Monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still a bodhisattva, not yet fully enlightened, it occurred to me, alas, this world has fallen into trouble in that it is born, ages and dies. It passes away and is reborn, yet it does not understand the escape from this suffering, headed by aging and death. When now will an escape be discerned from this suffering headed by aging and death? Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does aging and dying come to be? By what is aging and dying conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is birth, aging and death or dying comes to be. Aging and death has birth as its condition. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha was trying to, the Bodhisattva, he was trying to analyze, why is there suffering in this world? Then he realized, it's because we are born into this world, therefore we must suffer. If we are not born into this world, then there's no suffering. So the cause of aging and dying, that means suffering, is birth. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does birth come to be? By what is birth conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is being, birth comes to be. Birth has existence, as being as its condition. Then stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is thinking, why is there birth? Then he realized there is birth because there is this perception, I exist, I am. When you have that feeling, I exist in this world, then you perceive that you are born into this world, right? Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, or when what, this word bhava can be exist, does being come to be? When what exists, does being come to be? By what is being conditioned or existence conditioned? Then monks, by careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is clinging, being comes to be. Clinging, being has clinging as its condition. Stop here a moment. As I explained just now, once you enjoy life, you cling to it, then you have that perception that I enjoy, I exist. So that's why the being comes into. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does clinging come to be? By what is clinging conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is craving, clinging comes to be. Clinging has craving as its condition. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does craving come to be? By what is craving conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is feeling, craving comes to be. Craving has feeling for its condition. Stop here for a moment. So here, when there is pleasant feeling, because feeling, there is pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. So when you experience pleasure, when you have a pleasurable feeling, then you crave, the craving arises. Just like a small kid never tasted ice cream, you give him ice cream, when he tastes it, the pleasurable feeling makes him crave for it. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does feeling come to be? By what is feeling conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is contact, feeling comes to be. Feeling has contact as its condition. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does contact come to be? By what is contact conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there are the six sense bases, contact comes to be. Contact has the six sense bases as its condition. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, do the six sense bases come to be? By what are the six sense bases conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is mentality, materiality, the six sense bases come to be. The six sense bases have mentality, materiality as their condition. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does mentality and materiality come to be? By what is mentality and materiality conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is consciousness, mentality and materiality comes to be. Mentality and materiality has consciousness as its condition. Stop here for a moment. These two, nama rupa and vijnana, mentality, materiality, and consciousness, you must always consider them as a pair, because they arise together and cease together. So these, because they are twins, so you have to see that when consciousness and mentality, materiality exists, that means there is consciousness, then the being comes into exists, then the being must have the six senses. It's through the six senses that he perceives the world. So from there, when we have the six senses, then contact at the six senses occurs, which gives rise to feeling, etc. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does consciousness come to be? By what is consciousness conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is volition, consciousness comes to be. Consciousness has volition as its condition. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does volition come to be? By what is volition conditioned? Then monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is ignorance, volition comes to be. Volition has ignorance as its condition. Thus, with ignorance as condition, volition comes to be. With volition as condition, consciousness, etc., etc. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Now, origination. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, true knowledge and light. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha's experience was that when he was considering this dependent origination, he considered and he understood, and the mind became bright, because he basically his mind is already bright. But when he applied his clear mind to contemplating dependent origination, then light arose, just like on the night of enlightenment, when the Buddha was practicing hard to become enlightened. Then when he attained enlightenment, the Buddha said, light arose, knowledge arose. So same here. So the rest of the sutta is the reverse. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what does not exist, does aging and death not come to be? With the cessation of what does the cessation of aging and death, that means suffering, come about? Then monks, to careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is no birth, aging and death, that means suffering, does not come to be. With the cessation of birth comes cessation of aging and death. Then monks, it occurred to me, when what does not exist, does birth not come to be? By the cessation of what does the cessation of birth come about? Then monks, to careful attention, etc., then he realized, when there is no being, birth does not come to be. With the cessation of being comes cessation of birth, etc., etc. So I won't repeat the rest. The links, the 12 links are quite the same. So here you see, sometimes, like in this case, the Buddha comes to understanding just through logic, just thinking clearly. Why is there suffering? When you contemplate the reason for suffering, then you realize it's because this world is a world of suffering. So it's because we are born into this world that we suffer. If we are not born into this world, then we don't suffer. Then why are we born into this world? Because we have that feeling, I exist, I am. Once you have that I, then you see yourself in the world. Then why is there bhava, that being? Because of clinging. We cling. That's why at the moment of death, we refuse to die. We still cling to life. So that strength, that willpower brings us into the next birth. Okay.